Chapter 34, Buddy. I ain't never flown on a real airplane before, but Daddy did. He says when he was in the Army 1,000 years ago, he flew around to various garden spots of the military. He won't talk about any of them. He just nods and says, mm-hmm. And that makes me to think about Grandpa T saying that exact same thing. Wednesday morning, we pack up a little suitcase borrowed from the widow. Mama gives us some pralines for the lady in California. She wraps them up in tissue paper and sticks them in a box so they won't break. She says I have to carry them in my hands the whole way. When she walks out the room, Daddy tells me real quiet not to worry. He says we'll put them in the suitcase when we get to the airport. If they get broke, they get broke. I tell Tanya she's going to have to feed Rover while I'm gone. She says okay, and can she dress him up? I give her a look, and she don't ask again. We put on the nicest clothes we got, and Brother James drives us out to the airport. All the way out there, Brother James is talking nonstop. He's explaining about how he knows somebody who knows somebody who knows a man who flies around in airplanes on his business so much that he sometimes gets tickets for free. When that man heard about Buddy, he was falling all over himself to give us those tickets. He says maybe he'll come meet Buddy when we get him home. And Brother James says maybe we'll call the newspaper and they'll do a story. He says we could use a happy story instead of all the sad ones we read all the time. Like about how it was at the airport during the storm when the old sick people were laying on the floor all scared and tired and confused, and the helicopters were whomp-whomping in from the hospitals with more and more people. And that lady who wasn't even a nurse had to deliver a baby right out there on the runway in the middle of the afternoon in the scorching heat and sun. Brother James keeps on talking, but I ain't listening to any of that stuff. I heard enough about Katrina to last my whole life. I'm thinking about California now. I'm thinking I'll see some different stuff out there. I'll see mountains. I'll see the ocean. In some places they say you can see them both at the same time. Then I'm thinking that's all got to be just fine. But the most important thing I'm thinking about, the most important thing I'm going to see is Buddy. Brother James waves us goodbye, and we walk through the metal detector and stroll down that great big old hall like we've been doing this all our lives. They've got that Zydeco music playing, and they've got a lucky dog cart right there inside the building. Daddy says I can get a hot dog if I want. He says we got plenty enough money for something like that. Then that plane rolls down the runway and takes off. I'm thinking, I'm flying for real. I'm really up in the sky. I'm really looking down and seeing things with my real eyes. I can see the swamp spreading out down there all brown and fuzzy with trees. I can see roads like snail tracks shining in the sun. I can see the top sides of the clouds when I ain't never seen nothing before but the bottom sides. And when I think about why I'm in that airplane and where I'm going and what I'm doing, I can't hardly sit still in that scratchy old seat. The flight attendant squats down beside me. Is this your first time in the air? She asks and smiles all pretty. I nod. Don't be scared, she says. We'll take good care of you. I laugh. I ain't scared. I'm happier than I ever been in my whole life. You can't see as much with real flying as I thought. We pass over the deserts. We pass over the mountains. But we can't see any of it. I read the magazine in the pocket in front of me. I eat the food and it ain't good. I look out the window at enough clouds to last me forever. Just about when I think I'm going to go crazy with clouds, a voice comes over the radio and says, "We're about to land." "Praise God," Daddy says. And all of a sudden I realize he's been scared the whole way. He's been doing just like Grandpa T, pretending he's asleep 'cause he don't like where he is. "You been scared, Daddy?" I say. "Of course not." He huffs up his shoulders and shivers his head. I laugh, but he don't think it's one bit funny. We drag off the plane with everybody else. People are carrying all kinds of stuff. We ain't got nothing but the one suitcase, and it's somewhere in the belly of the plane. We're walking slow. We pass out of the hall into the airport. "What do we do now, Daddy?" I say. And then I don't wonder. There's a woman and a boy standing not 10 feet away. They're holding up a sign. It says, "Welcome, T. Jr. and Little T." I frown. I ain't Little T. I'm Lil T. Daddy's walking straight over to them. He's holding out his hand. He's shaking hands with the lady, and they're talking about the plane ride and the heat and all the people they've got in that great big airport. That boy and me are just looking at each other. He's white, just like the woman. He ain't as tall as me, but I guess he's about as old. He's got brown hair flopping around in girly curls. He's wearing something that looks like a bathing suit and a t-shirt with a surfboard on it. He's got on flip-flops. I'm standing there in my Sunday best and feeling like a fool. So I hold out my hand. "I'm Lil T," I say. Then I can't help myself. Not Little T. Lil T. He takes my hand. "I'm Brian," he says. We pump once and let go. Then we look away. "Thank you," Daddy said. "Come on, son." He and the white lady are walking off talking a mile a minute. Brian and me follow, but we don't say anything. After we get our suitcase, that lady puts us in the car and drives us out into the city. It's night, but I can tell California don't look anything like New Orleans. I don't see any columns on any of the houses. There ain't no iron fences. There ain't no big old live oak trees. Once we get into the mountains, it's pitch black dark, just like Mississippi. Then we go over a big hill, and there are lights spread out everywhere in front of us. We go around a curve, and it's all dark again. Daddy and the lady are sitting in the front seat talking away, but Brian and I don't say anything. We drive and drive and drive. We get to a little town, then we pull in the driveway of a house. It's a new house. It's got a wide driveway and a tall wood fence around the backyard. "Buddy's here," I say to Brian. He nods. I feel my heart going like a race car. We walk inside. She flips on the light and drops her keys on a glass table. They make a loud rattling noise, and then I hear a click, click, click somewhere on the tile floor in that house. I'm standing there with my hand resting on that glass tabletop, and part of my mind is saying, "Take your hand off. You'll make a spot." But I don't move. I'm looking down the hall. And then there he comes. He's a shadow in a hall of shadows. He gets into the light and then he stops. He's standing there looking at us, and I'm looking at him. I noticed two things. He's got a fake metal leg stuck on his stump, and his tail is curved up, but it ain't wagging. "Hello, Buddy," the woman says. She stoops down, and Buddy comes trotting into the room. "You remember Little T," she says, "and his daddy?" "Lil T," I say. I walk over and hold out my hand. Buddy lays his nose in the palm of my hand. His tail starts thumping. He looks up at me with his big old eyes, and there's his caterpillar eyebrow still sticking out like crazy on his forehead. "He remembers me," I say. I look up at all those people and I smile. "Of course he remembers me," I say. "He's my dog." Brian spins around all of a sudden and walks out the room. I hear a door slam down the hall. "I'm sorry," the lady says, but I ain't listening. I'm watching Buddy clicking down that hallway, following after Brian as fast as he can. Chapter 35. The next morning, the lady says we've only got one day in California. She's going to show us a good time. She says we're going back over the mountain to the beach because I ain't never seen the ocean before. She says nobody's quite lived until they've seen the ocean. I feel like I've done plenty of living already, but I don't say anything. We all pile in a car. This time Buddy's sitting on the back seat right smack between me and Brian. We ain't hardly got started when we pass the school. "That's Brian's school," the lady says. It looks like a school on TV. "You're close enough to ride your bike," I say. "I don't ride a bike." "You ain't got one?" He cuts his eyes at me. "I didn't say that. I said I don't ride one." I shrug my shoulders and look out the window again. Now I can really see the mountains. They are giant hills with dry brown grass growing on them. In some places you can see where the dirt just fell off the side of the mountain and piled up a couple of 100 feet below. Sometimes there are great big old rocks sticking out of the dirt perched up on the top of a cliff. Sometimes there's a cactus hanging on the side of the hill, just like in the movies. "Are those mountains evergreen?" I ask Brian. He swivels his face toward me. "When it rains," he says. "How long has it been since it rained?" He looks like he's thinking. Then he shrugs. 3, maybe 4 months. I can't believe it. In New Orleans, it rains almost every afternoon in the summer. He don't say nothing. He puts his hand on Buddy's head. Buddy shifts a little and puts his head in Brian's lap. Brian turns and looks out the window. We keep on riding. Finally, we're down out of the mountains and in the city. Eventually, we park on a street where there are all kinds of little stores selling stuff that looks like it was made for ladies. Daddy gives me some spending money, and I buy a hair bow for Tanya and a soap that's shaped like a shell for Mama. The lady says, "You're so thoughtful." I say, "You try going all the way to California and not bringing them back something." Daddy's standing over in the corner and he starts tee-heeing, and I say, "Where is that ocean anyway?" We walk out of the store and down the street, and at the end of it, boom, there's the ocean. We step on a walkway made out of boards up near the street. People are everywhere, and then there's about a mile of sand before you get to the water. Then the land just stops, and there ain't nothing but water as far as you can see, and those great big old waves rolling in and crashing on the people swimming. I'm standing there all amazed, and Daddy's mm-hmming beside me when Buddy takes off running across the sand. And then I'm even more amazed. I ain't never seen him run before, not once. Brian goes running after him. They're chasing up and down. The lady says, "Little T, why don't you go with them?" So I step off the walkway into the sand. I walk and walk and walk. They're running back and forth. Brian pulls a ball out of his pocket and throws it a long way. Off Buddy goes, racing after it. He brings it back to Brian, and Brian throws it again. Finally, I get all the way down to them. Brian squatting down and rubbing Buddy's neck. He looks up at me. "When Buddy first got here," he said, "he was afraid of the water." Brian stands up and throws the ball. Buddy goes flying after it. "He just laid down in the sand when we came to the beach," Brian says. "And look at him now. He loves it." "It's the sound," I say. "That ocean's so loud." "Loud?" Brian says. I nod. Brian turns and looks toward the water. "I never thought of that," he says. "It just sounds like ocean to me." "It sounds like roaring," I say. "It sounds like a hurricane." Buddy's back with the ball. Brian takes it out of his mouth. It's all slobbery. "You throw it," Brian says. I swing back and throw that ball way off down the beach. Buddy's running after it before my arm even starts going down. Brian's standing there looking after him. The wind's blowing his girly curls all around his head. He's smiling. "We ain't got a beach like this in New Orleans," I say. "But when I get Buddy home, we can go to the park to throw the ball. Or maybe Mama will let me go all the way to the levee now." Brian turns around and looks at me. He ain't smiling no more. Buddy comes up carrying the ball. I reach out my hand. Brian reaches out his hand too. Buddy stops. He's standing there looking at us, his eyes going back and forth between us. He's panting. Slobber's drooling off the ball. Those two hands stay stuck out toward him. Buddy dips his head like he's about to drop the ball, but he don't. Then all of a sudden Brian turns around and walks off. Buddy watches him. Then he gives me the ball. I throw it long and hard, and I can't help it. I'm the one who's smiling now. After a while, I start to get cold on that beach. Buddy's doing all that running. He's got fur, so he's okay. But here I am in the middle of the day in August, standing on a beach, and I'm cold. I look up, and the others are all huddled up too, watching Buddy and me playing with the ball. I throw it one last time. When he comes trotting back with it, I take it and kneel down in front of him to rub him up all around his ears and down his neck. "So you like that?" I'm saying. "You like chasing that ball? You like running on this beach?" Buddy's panting and panting with his tongue hanging out, his ears pricked up, and his tail standing high like he's ready to go for the ball again any time I'm ready to throw it. I feel his collar and dig it out from under his fur. It's a new one, but it's still red. The tag says Buddy on it, and it's got Brian's name and phone number too. "So Brian's afraid you'll run off," I say. "Have you been thinking about running off?" Buddy don't say nothing. He just sits down on the sand, looking me in the eye and listening so hard his ears twitch. I hold his face between my hands and rub under his ears with my fingertips. "You were thinking about coming to find me, weren't you?" I say, "like those dogs do in the movies, all the way across the mountains." Buddy still don't say nothing, but he keeps looking straight at me with his big old brown eyes, just as soft as always. I'm thinking he wishes he could tell me all about it. All about how he was going to jump out the window of that California house, how he was going to cross the mountains and trot along the side of the road for weeks and weeks, how one day he was going to come down our street, and then there I'd be, waiting for him just like he's always waited for me. That would be a fool thing to do, Buddy, I said. I'm glad you didn't try. I'm rubbing the top of his head. I'm stretching his eyes way open like Grandpa T used to do, and that caterpillar eyebrows climbing up his forehead. I let go and it eases back down where it belongs. Or maybe, I say real soft, maybe you weren't thinking about coming back to me at all. Maybe you're mad at me 'cause I left you behind. I can see in Buddy's eyes. He remembers that bathroom. Were you scared, I say, when that storm came and there wasn't nobody there but you? Buddy dips his head and whines a little bit. They made me do it, I say. Daddy and Mama and Grandpa T. Buddy lifts up his white paw and pats me on the knee. I was going to stay, I say. I was going to make soup for Miss Washington. I was going to... Buddy, she... Then I'm wrapping my arms around his neck and rubbing my face in his soft, soft fur. I'm smelling his old leaf smell, and I'm feeling his cold nose snuffling in my ear. His warm breath is puffing on my eyelids, and his wet tongue is licking me all over my face. I'm sorry, Buddy, I'm saying over and over again. I am so, so sorry. When Buddy and I get back to the boardwalk, the others are already walking ahead to the car. We follow them, and Buddy trots along beside me just like we're headed off to mow somebody's yard. I'm wondering what he's going to think when he sees the yards in Narlands now. I'm wondering if he's going to think I've turned lazy since I ain't mowing regular no more. At the car, Brian's mama makes us stand in groups for pictures. She arranges us different ways for a while, and then Daddy takes some so she can be in them. And finally, some stranger takes a couple so we can all be in one together. I can't believe Buddy puts up with all that picture taking. But Grandpa T said Buddy had the patience of Job, and I guess he was right. Then Brian is poking around in the trunk. He comes up with a brush and some cloths and starts cleaning up Buddy. Buddy stands there as still as he can while Brian brushes all the sand out of his fur. Daddy and the lady are watching. You take good care of that dog, Daddy says. Yes, sir, Brian says. I'll do that. I'll do that, I say, and Brian hands over the brush. Buddy's fur is looking shiny. It's looking black as night. His ribs are all hid. It feels good running that brush over him. Then Brian wipes Buddy's paws with a cloth. He rubs ointment on the bottom of his feet. Buddy stands still as a statue, lifting up 1 foot at a time. You can tell he's used to it now. When he's done wiping, Brian unbuckles Buddy's bare leg. Why do you take off his leg, I say. Sand gets under it, Brian says. We got to be careful. He cleans real good where it rubs against his skin. He helps Buddy into the car. He won't need it for the ride. We'll wash it off at home and then put it back on. You do this every time? Brian nods. Will you teach me what to do? Brian looks at me for a minute. He looks at his mama. She's watching us hot. He looks back at me. Of course, he says. He's your dog. When we get home, Brian goes straight back to his room. The lady offers us a cold drink, and I'm thirsty, so I say, yes, please. I'm standing there in the kitchen while she's fishing in the refrigerator. I see Mama's box of pralines sitting on the counter, and somebody's taking a nibble out of one. I don't see how anybody could take one nibble and then stop. All of a sudden, I look over in the corner, and there's a big old tray with 2 bowls. One's got water, one's empty. Both say Buddy on them. Somebody painted them special. The lady stands up and hands me a cold drink. She hands Daddy a beer. Look at those bowls, Daddy, I say. Daddy looks at the bowls, too. He looks at me. He looks at the lady. You've done a lot for Buddy, he says. He's a special dog, she says. Did you get him that new leg yourself, Daddy says. She nods. Brian insisted. All those homeless dogs, Daddy says. Why'd you choose Buddy? Brian loved him. All of a sudden, I don't want my cold drink. I set it down on the counter and push it away. I walk down the hall toward our room. Buddy's laying on the floor by a shut door. His tail thumps as I pass, but he don't get up. I go in my room and I close the door. It's a long time before Daddy knocks. It's already getting dark. Did that trip wear you out? He says. I guess. He sits down on the edge of the bed. She's firing up the grill, he says. She's cooking us a steak. I don't say nothing. What's the matter, son? I turn over and look at him. Brian loves Buddy, I say. Daddy looks out the skinny little window to one side of the room. What'd you expect, little T? He says. But Buddy's my dog, I say. Brian can't love him. I turn back over and pull the pillow over my head. He can love him, and he does, Daddy says. I don't see what you're so surprised at about that. It said so right in that letter. Did you think they were lying when they wrote that part? I just lay there breathing into my pillow. I can smell the grill in the backyard. I can hear the lady chopping something in the kitchen. After a while, the mattress jiggles when Daddy stands up. Then I turn over and look at him. But Daddy, I say, do you think Buddy loves him back? Daddy don't say nothing. He just turns around and walks out the door. Chapter 36. The room gets darker and darker. I hear Buddy clicking around on the tile floor. I hear the sliding door off the back go whoosh when it opens and closes. I wonder why there ain't no ceiling fan as hot as it is. Then Daddy knocks on the door and comes in again. Get up, he says. We're eating. I ain't hungry. You're eating anyway, he says. Wash your hands. Then come out here and act like you know how to behave. Daddy shuts the door and I lay there a minute. What if I don't, I think. What if I open that door, a tiny crack, and call Buddy real soft, and he comes running and sliding down the hall to me? What if I pull him into the room and tell him, shh, shh, and his tail is thumping away while I'm rubbing the side of his head and scratching up under his chin? What if I open up that skinny little window and climb out and take Buddy with me, and we sneak around the house while they're all standing in the back around the grill? And then we sneak down that curvy street to the road where that side of the mountain is all caved in. And we keep climbing till we get to some woods, and then I tell my head to shut up. That's crazy thinking. What am I going to do all by myself in the woods of California with a 3-legged dog? What is my daddy going to do when he finds me gone? What is my mama going to say when he calls her on the telephone? I'm standing in front of the mirror. I stare at myself. I wash my hands and I go outside. That lady knows how to cook a good steak. We eat that steak and a salad all full of tomatoes and some other stuff I ain't never heard of. The whole time we're eating, Daddy's telling her about Katrina and New Orleans. She wants to know everything. She wants to know where we went, and what the storm sounded like, and what color the water was when we tried to get home. She listens so quiet while Daddy tells about the first time we got back to the house. He tells about the X painted on the front, and how we went up the stairs, and what the bathroom looked like, and how there was a note, but it was so faded we couldn't read it. She don't move when Daddy tells about how we got home and Grandpa T passed that very night. After Daddy tells it all, we sit quiet for a while and look up at the sky. That sky is big in California. There ain't no trees or tall houses where she lives. You lay on your back on the grass in their yard, and you look up, and all you see is sky. Sky and stars. Before long, they all go inside, and I'm still laying there looking up. I'm getting cold, even though it's summer, but I don't want to get up. Then Buddy comes wandering over just like before. He lays down beside me and puts his head on my stomach just like he used to do in the shed. I put my hand on the top of his head and smooth back his fur. His tail goes thump. The shed is gone, I tell him. When we get back, you'll see it's just a heap of wood lying in the corner of the yard. His tail goes thump thump, and I keep talking. And that bathroom, Buddy, you sure tore up that bathroom. It don't matter, though, 'cause we had to rip it all out anyway. The water got up under the tile. All the floorboards were starting to rot. So I don't have to repaint that door after all. I'm going to have to paint the brand new door instead, when we get it. We're about to finish Mom and Daddy's room. Then we're going to do the bathroom. When we got the bathroom finished, the rest of them are going to move in with me and Daddy. We'll all be together again, and you'll be there too, Buddy. It'll be just like before, just exactly like before. Almost. I'm looking up at the sky. It's all black as Buddy's fur and full of stars. Grandpa T passed, Buddy. Did you hear Daddy saying about that? We were all sitting there in the living room of that little apartment talking about his house, and he passed. Just like that. We didn't even notice. How long you suppose he was gone before any of us even looked his way? I rub Buddy's ears, and he shifts his head on my stomach. I'm thinking he went to his place when it came time for him to come on back. He just said, nah. He just said, I ain't doing it. I'm too tired. I ain't never going to say you're ugly again, Buddy. Oh, he ain't never going to say you're ugly. He ain't never going to say you're ugly again, Buddy. He ain't never going to say you stink. I stare up at those stars for a while, then I go on. So I'm getting his room, my own room. When that room's done, you can sleep with me. I'll tell Mama she has to let you. I'll tell her there ain't no shed anymore, and you got used to sleeping inside at this house here in California. I'll tell her that's what you got to have now. And we've got to keep you away from baby Terrell. He's walking all over the place now, and he's learned how to hit things. He whacked me with his toy train just the other day. I've still got a sore place on my head. And Tanya, I say, I bet you miss her singing. She's learning lots of words now, so she's getting better. People say she sings like a bird. She likes singing to you, Buddy. You listened. You ain't like Rover. And then I stop. I don't know what to tell Buddy about Rover. I think about it while I look at the stars. Got to explain about Rover, I say. He ain't a grown-up dog like you. He ain't got no sense. He runs all over the place. He jumps on people. He's got short hair, and it's white and brown. He likes to catch rats. I'm teaching him not to put them on the porch, and we're working on the jumping on people part. When he learns, I'll stop again. I need to think some more. I didn't ask for Rover, I finally explained to Buddy. Santa Claus brought him. It wasn't part of any plan. Not like with you. You were meant to be my dog, Buddy. I bend my eyes down toward his face. All I can see in the dark is his eyes shining back at me. It was meant to be, wasn't it, Buddy? I say to him, and his tail goes thump. When it's late, the lady says it's time for bed. She says our plane don't leave until the afternoon, but there are all kinds of things we got to do to get Buddy ready for his trip. We go inside the dark house, and Buddy goes clicking down the hall. I'm thinking he's going to bed in our room now, but he goes in Brian's room instead. I follow him. Brian's already sitting on his bed. He helps Buddy up. Buddy curls up on one side. Brian looks up and sees me. Does he sleep with you every night? I say. Brian nods. What about that big old dog bed? Brian shrugs. He likes my bed better. I watch Buddy shift his head a little on his paws. Brian reaches out a hand and smooths Buddy's head. Then he turns and looks at me. I would never leave Buddy, he says. Never. No matter what. I would die first. I spin around and go in our room and slam the door. That's the longest night I ever lived in my life. I can't go to sleep for thinking. I want to go in Brian's room and smack his face. I want to sneak out the door and disappear. When I finally go to sleep, all I can dream about is Buddy in that room snuggled up against that white boy who stole my dog. Daddy shakes me awake before light. He says to wake up. There's a problem. He don't move off my bed. He sits there listening. I'm listening too. The sounds in the house ain't right. Somebody's choking. There's a bang on the floor, and then Buddy's paws go click, 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 click down the hall. Daddy stands up and opens the door real quiet. He's peering this way and that. Then the lady's bedroom door slams back, and she comes tearing down the hall and whips into Brian's room with Buddy limping behind her. Brian, she's saying, Brian! Then me and Daddy are both running down the hall. Brian's laying on his bed with his arms and legs jerking and his eyes rolled up in his head. Sweet Jesus, Daddy says. It's a seizure, the lady says real fast. He gets them, Buddy tells me. She sits down beside him. She's singing at him like he's a baby. It's okay now. She's singing, Mommy's here. Sweetheart, it's okay. Brian keeps on jerking. He whams his hand on the headboard. She grabs it and wipes the blood off. She's pushing the covers out of his way so he don't get tangled in him. Shouldn't we call the doctor, Daddy says. No, she says, he'll be okay. This happens. I look, and there's Buddy standing by the bed watching Brian jerk. Buddy's whining a little bit. He's poking his nose at Brian's foot where it's hanging off the bed. Good dog, the lady says. And then Brian's still. He turns his eyes to his mama like he's exhausted. It's okay, she says. Go on to sleep now. You're fine. She helps Buddy climb back up on the bed, and he snuggles up next to Brian. He licks Brian's face and rests his head on Brian's stomach. Brian puts his hand on Buddy's back and closes his eyes. Buddy looks up at us and blinks. The lady stands up and we all go out. She shuts off the light. He'll sleep now, she says. She looks at Daddy and tries to smile. Good night. Thank you. Me and Daddy go back in our room. We climb back in our beds. We lay there in the dark, waiting for the light. Chapter 37. Last chapter. Here we go. What do you think? What do you think is going to happen? What do you think? Is Buddy going home to New Orleans, or is Buddy going to stay in California? Chapter 37 is going to wrap it all up for us. It's been good. When I wake up again, Daddy's standing next to me all showered and dressed. "Get up, sleepyhead," he says. "This is your big day." When Daddy leaves out, I go and look out at that skinny window. That California grass just ain't green enough, and those trees ain't much more than bushes. And all the stuff growing up next to the house looks spiky and mean. I go out to the family room, and they're all sitting out on the patio drinking orange juice and eating cantaloupe. When I whoosh open that sliding door, Buddy lifts up his head and thumps his tail. "Look at that," Daddy says. "He's looking forward to going home." I sit down next to Brian. He's got a bandage on his hand where he whacked it on the headboard. He don't look at me. I can't eat any cantaloupe. I can't drink any juice. "How about some toast?" the lady says. Her mouth is full of teeth just like Tanya's, and it's smiling, but her eyes ain't smiling. "No, thank you, ma'am," I say, polite as I know how. "I guess I'm just not hungry." "It's an exciting day," she says, and grins her fakey-looking grin. The lady's still all bright and smiling when we pack our things in the car and get Buddy to climb in the pen in the back seat. She's talking and talking, and we're getting in the car, and I notice Brian ain't getting in with us. He's just standing there by the front door with his hands shoved down in his pockets, staring off at the mountains in the distance. When we're all packed up, she says, "Okay, sweetheart, go on now." He looks at her almost like he hates her. Then he stomps across the yard to the neighbor's house. He's standing there ringing the bell while we're shutting the car doors. He goes inside just as we pull out the drive. The lady's holding on to that steering wheel like she's afraid it's going to fly out of her hands. She's staring at the road and blinking hard. She reaches over and snaps on the radio. Daddy and me both know better than to talk. We're going back down that twisty-turny road. We're passing the Falling-In Mountain. We're passing those old dry cactuses hanging on the side of the hill. Then we're turning onto the superhighway with about 1,000,000 other cars. That radio keeps on playing one song after another. I stick my hand in Buddy's cage, and he rests his head on the palm of my hand. "Does he have those fits much?" I whisper to Buddy, but Buddy don't say anything. "Is that why he don't ride a bicycle?" I say real quiet. Then I lean down close as I can get to Buddy's ear. I smell his smell. "Where do you suppose Brian's daddy is?" Buddy starts up whimpering. I reach through the wire of the pen and I scratch to find his ears. I rub his skin back on the top of his head and make his eyes stretch open. He keeps poking his nose at my leg, and every once in a while he whimpers some more. Okay. It takes a long time to get to the airport. The closer we get, the more the cars seems are on the road. The lady drives in a parking garage, and we go around and around so much I start to feel sick. Finally, she pulls in a space, and the car stops moving. We can't carry Buddy in his pen, so we take him out on a leash, and Daddy starts to wrestle the pen out of the back seat while the lady drags our suitcase out of the trunk. I'm holding Buddy on his leash, and he's sitting there whining and poking his nose at my feet. "He must be nervous," the lady says. Her face looks like she got 10 years older just on that drive. It's natural, though, she says. She sets down a suitcase and starts digging in her purse. I have some medicine for when I changed my mind, I say. She stops talking and Daddy stops wrestling. He straightens up out of the car door. Say what? He says. I swallow big before I open my mouth again. I say, I changed my mind. About what? He says. About Buddy, I say. Daddy and the lady are both staring at me. I suck in a real deep breath and close my eyes. When I open them, I look up at the sky, but all I can see is roof. It's all on me. I start over. I guess, I say, Buddy better stay here. The lady's face goes limp. She looks off into the garage like she's worried about a car coming around the corner, but there ain't no traffic in there. Daddy looks at me hard. That man gave us his tickets so we could come out here, son. All those people helped. It's a little late to change your mind. I know, but this is just what I got to do, Daddy. I look down at Buddy. He's whining and pushing his nose at my feet. Brother James told me I was the instrument of God, I say. He said our car hit Buddy so we could save him. I thought I was saving him for me. I look up at Daddy. He's got his hand over his eyes. Turns out, I say, I was saving him for Brian. I guess that was the plan all along. I just didn't see it. The lady's got her back to us now. Her shoulders are all curved over. She's leaning one hand on the car next to us. Daddy, do you think that man's going to want me to pay him back for those tickets? Then the lady turns around and finally speaks up. No, she says. Buddy goes back with you. He's your dog. We don't have the right to keep him. I hand the lady the leash. Then I squat down and hold Buddy's head in my hands. I smell that old leaf smell. I rub my finger on his caterpillar eyebrow. He looks at me with his big old brown eyes. Grandpa T says, comes a time when you've got to let go. I tell him, I'm letting go now, Buddy. I lean my head on top of his, and he sticks up his tongue and licks my chin. I love you, Buddy, I say. Goodbye. Then I can't help it. I start running. I'm running as fast as I can. Daddy grabs up the suitcase and comes chasing after me. Lil T, he's yelling. Lil T, stop! But I can't stop. I can't look back. I don't want to change my mind. Then I'm deep in the airport and there's thousands of people all around me. And I stop running. I stand there and wait for Daddy. When he catches me up, he puts his arm around me and I press my face against his chest. And we stand still. I guess even Grandpa T couldn't drag this story out much more after that. We get on the airplane and we take off, and Daddy and I don't hardly talk. I'm staring out the window with my teeth all clenched together. He's mad at me and he's not mad at me. He's pretending like he's asleep one minute, then he's looking over at me the next. When we get home, Tanya busts out crying, and that don't help. Mama squinches up her mouth. Brother James shakes his head, but I promised to mow at the church for free. And turns out that man ain't worried a bit about those tickets. I write Jamila a long, long letter about everything. I stick 2 pictures in the envelope. One is from California. The others one Mr. Nelson took of our whole family, sitting on the front steps of our house. It's a good picture, because everybody's behaving, even Rover. 2 weeks into school, we finish up the bathroom and we all move in together again. I get some glasses and find out most other people have always been able to see separate leaves on the trees. When Eddie comes over to help us hang the rock in my new bedroom, he says I look like I finally got some sense. Daddy says that would take more than glasses. Tanya says she wants glasses. Mama says, is somebody going to nail up this rock, or is she going to have to hold it there until her arms fall off? On my 14th birthday, I get a card all the way from Virginia and another one from California. Mama and Daddy give me a red bicycle. I ride to the levee with a new boy from my class at school, and we throw the ball for Rover all afternoon long. One Sunday on the way to church, Tanya's playing the fool with baby Terrell, trying to teach him to sing, "Itsy weetsy spider." Daddy's saying, "Can't y'all be quiet for just 1 minute?" And then we look and see the Tomato Man has finally come back. We're passing by him, waving like we're crazy, and all of a sudden, I stop waving and I say, "Right there, that's where we found Buddy, right in the middle of St. Roch Avenue." Mama turns around and looks at me. "I'm sorry, son," she says. But I'm not sorry. I'm thinking, this is happiness. This is home. And that's all of Buddy. Until the next book. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May He make His face to shine on you and be gracious to you. May He lift up His countenance upon you and grant you His peace. Till next time.